Other than the fact that, when Tom and Brad are out of town, I get the chance to play some music, and I always choose to do Jackson Browne. That song was chosen because it had something to say about the scripture for today, and the whole idea of the way the hammer shapes the hand, that rings so true for me about life. The more we find ourselves kind of following after something, the more we do something, the more we have a particular goal, the more we have a particular thing that we're trying to accomplish, the more that ends up shaping who we are, doesn't it? In a lot of ways. Like, for instance, right now, if you were to kind of look amongst your things right now, and think about what is it you have with you right now that is the most valuable thing to you. This is kind of a hold-up, Just take it out for a minute. Take it out. Take out your most valuable thing in your possession right now. What is it? Hold it up. Really? Why not? Hold it up. Jeff will now be coming around with a basket and collect. We really need a good collection today, obviously. No, think about it. What is that? Maybe it's a ring, maybe it's a cell phone, maybe it's your wallet. Maybe it's something else in your possession right now. What is it about that is the most valuable thing to you? What makes it the most valuable thing? What we value, of course, somehow has a tendency to have more impact on kind of shaping us. That whole piece about the way the hammer shapes the hand. But I don't think this particular message is just for us as individuals. It's kind of like a community piece, too. What is it that we as a culture have valued? What is it that we have seen as the main thing? And how is that shaping who we are and who we become? There may well be kind of a revolution happening right now, a shift. Some people talk about kind of a shift in consciousness or a shift in our own human understanding. I like to think about it as almost like we've been looking in a mirror, and now more and more what science and psychology and others, philosophy are doing, they've always been trying to hold a mirror up to the mirror. In other words, beginning to get a little bit more of a sense of how is it that we as human beings, how does our consciousness work? So we're getting all this great research that's coming back about, maybe things aren't quite the way we thought they were. Things like, even in the world of quantum physics, there's these bits of information that we're getting that are maybe challenging the thought that everything is like we thought it was. There's this whole thing that actually Einstein discovered, that if you have these electrons that are charged and they're in a particular spin, and then you separate them and you send them off into really distant, different places, if one starts spinning, the other one still seems to follow in suit. There are things about our world that we're just now beginning to glimpse, and some of that is about the way we as human beings operate, how our consciousness operates. One of the things that seems clear is there seems to be a kind of an evolution that we move from a childlike place of feeling and acting to a place where we develop a kind of another level of self that begins to be able to say, it's not just feel, act, now I'm reflecting on how I act. And I notice how I feel. And I sometimes try to control that. So by the time a kid gets to be 5 or 6 or 10, or some of us not till about 50, we start to have this other part of us that's able to kind of say, okay, don't just hit somebody when you're mad. You can control some of what you're thinking and what you're doing, what you're feeling. So there's kind of another level of self that kind of grows on top of that primary, just automated feel and do kind of part of us. And then what happens with that dynamic what we think may be happening with that dynamic is essentially that part of us that's doing the evaluating and saying, control that, becomes like our own critic. And that part of us that becomes this critic of our kind of automatic feel and do self becomes kind of the master of its domain and conquers us. Many of us are kind of conquered by this part of us that is always evaluating what we're doing, always analyzing what we're doing. You ever feel that way? Like there's a part of you that's always kind of picking yourself apart. If I were going to say, what does it mean to come in from the cold this morning or hurry home to your heart? It wouldn't be for us to learn that the values that have shaped us are just from this other level of us that's always in the critical mode. Or that we need to just fully give that up and become these people who don't try to control themselves and just do whatever we feel at any moment. It would actually be that there is a new evolution happening that wants to invite you home in a way that really is about developing another level of yourself. A level of yourself that can just notice and be aware of the way we are always in this critical mode of ourselves. That could also be able to tune in and notice that when I feel something, I can just kind of participate with it without having to judge it or tear it apart. So let me give you an example. When I was a kid, I remember getting told it wasn't okay to cry, be afraid, or be angry. That pretty much shoots most of what you feel right out of the chute, right? I mean, if I cried, I was being a wimp. If I was afraid, I was being a girl. Help me. Most girls were a lot braver than me anyway. I don't know how that got to be such a thing. And if I got angry, I was being a jerk. Or it was dangerous. You know, a couple of times I did get angry, and I punched a guy one time. I realized, I can't let that happen. So I learned it's not good to be tearful, fearful, or angry. So I had scripts. I had these scripts that oversaw my natural. If anything came up naturally to cry about, or to feel fear about, or to be angry about, I would have these other voices, this other layer of self that would say, no, that's not you. You're the cool guy. Chill. Be cool. To be cool is nice. I found myself actually getting along with people really good, except inside, there was a lot of me that wasn't there. So these scripts were keeping me kind of half connected to the people in my life, right? I wasn't able to be angry. I wasn't able to share my fear. I wasn't able to share my distress. This other second part of me that had developed to squelch, I had taken in from the people in my life and from the culture I lived in. And so have you. That's the hammer in our life. It's the hammer that tends to want to put down feelings, that wants to say, you can't do it, don't get too excited, don't get fearful, don't get angry, all of those things. And when those hammers come down on us, they squelch us, they squelch our freedom. Now, I'm not here to say that somehow the best thing for me to do is to just suddenly start crying right now. You know, that wouldn't help you. And it wouldn't help me. Nor would it be that the best thing for me to do right now would be to be overcome with fear. I'm glad I have this second layer. But I want to develop another layer where I can let myself have these feelings, not necessarily as a child, let them just run things, take over my behavior. But what I discover, the more I just allow myself to reconnect with what is naturally there within me. The biology in my body is there. I mean, I was born a crybaby and I still am. So are you. No matter what you learned about what was okay to express. I'm also somewhat of a scaredy cat. And I can acknowledge that and not let it run my life. To be able to tune into what is happening for me means I can get out from under always having to buy into the meaning and the way that my evaluative part of me wants to always shut that stuff down. Now, it doesn't matter whether I want to have a healthier relationship with you or with myself or with the creator of life. These little scripts that I have often been the most important to how that dynamic happens. If I have a way of being that says you can't get excited, then frankly, I'm just not going to be able to get excited. It really doesn't matter what happens. If Jesus appeared in front of me, my script says, don't get excited. You don't want to put that out there. It could be scary. Somebody could make fun of you. So don't get too excited. Or, if something really scary was happening and I couldn't acknowledge that, my script would probably control how I responded. And so for you and I, what does it mean to kind of take back control, both in our own lives and in the world around us? I want to suggest two things. One, in our own lives, as we grow a capacity to tune into what's happening inside of us, to just notice what we're feeling, and participate with it without judging it. It doesn't mean that I make a life decision out of a momentary feeling, but to be able to be present in my body with what I'm feeling in the moment can make a huge difference in my relationships. And then when I think about how does this relate to the culture that we live in? So much of the world that we live in has been shaped by particular ways of feeling and behaving that tend to want to squelch authenticity. We spend much of our time, and most of the people that we watch who are public figures spend most of their time trying to act in the way that they think they're supposed to act, right? Say the right thing, smile the right way, act right. What is it that the goal is in that? Mostly, the goal is, I think, fit in so you don't get embarrassed. Do what's expected so you don't have to feel humiliation. And so, what has shaped us culturally in a big way is our fear of humiliation, our fear of embarrassment. Something is happening, though. If you get around young people particularly, you discover that there's kind of a rebellion happening against that. Not in everyone. But there's a sense in which that which has been kind of expected norm is gradually deteriorating, just like the music business kind of turned into indie business. Just like the way only a few songs were popular, now anything that kind of gathers some energy can find new expression. We're living on the edge of a capacity for authentic movement. I think the revolution of the time to come is there in the movement of authentic energy, and you can call that spirit. So, how do we connect in that way with that? How do you and I connect with that? I want to just suggest it begins by leaving the goal of hiding from shame and humiliation, embarrassment, and embracing the goal of reconnecting with what feels authentic and true in our feelings, and developing the capacity more and more to not judge what we're feeling, but to be present with it, just to participate with it, not to immediately choose to make it somehow the truth, but to participate with the feeling. my friend Gary David, who I'm bringing here in October to do a seminar, who edited the book, The Art of Awareness by Samuel Bois, would suggest that we have the capacity to move our immediate attention, our awareness, between these levels of self. That there are times where I can give attention to what's happening in my body right now, in my emotion, my feeling. I can also notice that my attention can be brought to that level that's the critic. It's the squelcher. And I need that. It's not to say that that's a terrible thing. I need that. But when my awareness can move to another level of observing all of that working together, where I begin to notice how I'm controlling what I'm feeling, there's a new set of freedoms that can happen for me as I grow that level of awareness. And so, if we are shaped by that which we are always doing, maybe that different place of awareness is where we're growing toward in order to not be so patterned by what the culture wants us to do, which is play small, fit in, avoid shame. The authentic life seems to be about something much richer.